Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Literacy View. We had a change of plans. We had to change from Zoom. We were Zoom bombed with some porn, and this is the world we're in now. So, if anybody is out there listening, you will.
The chat is going to be open, so it's still going to be, you'll still have voice. It's not exactly the way we wanted it. That was definitely some BS, but Faith and I will never give up. We're passionate people. We definitely stressed out for a couple of minutes. Thank you all for being patient. We were so excited to see you live, but we'll do the best that we can to continue the conversation. So hop on. If you guys can share the link with, on our page and so forth, and message your friends that we are live, that would be amazing.
All right. And also, I don't think is this going to Twitter?
I did set it to Twitter, but I'm going to try right now, Faith, to share the link in multiple places. So just give me a second to try to work on that. Okay.
All right, so while you're doing that, I'll get started. So
yep, you'll get started.
All right. So we are going to be talking about Mark Seidenberg's latest blogs. One is called On the Phonemes in Phonemic Awareness. And then the other one is called More on Teaching Phonemes, that came out a few days after the first. The first one was on August 6th. And then the second one was on August 10th. And interestingly enough, this got a lot of attention. And this has been a topic that's been out there for a while about phonemic awareness. And it's kind of like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? There are a lot of people out there who have phonemic awareness programs.
I see you, Faith, live on High Five Literacy. So I'm trying to see if I could figure out a way to share that to our Facebook group as well. We have a couple of people joining on. I think the hardest part right now, Faith, is people don't know where to find us. So can we just take 1 minute to try to get people on board? If you're on High Five Literacy, please go on our Facebook group page. Also start spreading the word. We're still going live. We're still going to do this. We're still going to have participation in the chat. It doesn't look exactly the way we wanted it, but like we said, we don't want to give up. We really want to talk about these blog posts, and we want to hear from you. So help us as much as you can. Stacy, you're here. If you could do some troubleshooting, some sharing of links and figure this all out. We're using StreamYard. We were able to share directly to StreamYard on Facebook before, but now it became a little bit more difficult. And because we're a little shook up by what happened, we'd appreciate some support. So if anybody could give us support, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Yes. All so right. We did want your participation. That was the whole idea, that we would have these conversations.
And it will be because I'm sharing now. I'm not going to give up, Faith.
So, all right. In any case, I think that.
Oh, Faith, that's it. Now the link is live. I just clicked post on our Facebook.
Okay.
And let me keep going. I'm not going to stop. I'm going to get on your Twitter now, Faith, too. So just give me 1 more minute, Faith. 1 more minute. Okay, right. So we are now on the Literacy View live feed on our group. We're also on our YouTube page. Let's see where else. We're also on Faith's High Five Literacy page. And now I'm going to copy the link. This is a good learning experience.
Yep. So to fill people in, we had the Zoom going, and we had like probably about a dozen people who signed on at the very beginning, and one bombed it, and that was the end. So we apologize. Those things happens in schools, right? It happened here. So it's unfortunate because we really wanted to have that discussion, but we are going to be checking the chats, and we hope that you will participate. So
we hope you'll also spread the news to your friends. Hop on. We are not stopping.
So let's get started, because this is supposed to be a quickie, right? So That's the whole idea. We're having a quickie right now.
Maybe, Faith, I'm going to say something really stupid.
I
and a
know,
little
right?
raunchy.
Maybe
We might
had the wrong
maybe
idea.
calling it a quickie if somebody that wasn't
No,
a Literacy View fan is the
that's
wrong idea.
the way it goes. You know, something you
Oh.
can't even make like a little joke that people take it the wrong way. All right, so here
Faith,
we
can I ask you one favor?
yes.
Can you take your phone right now,
And what?
go on our Facebook and copy the thing onto your
No,
phone?
I'm not doing that right now. I'm sorry. Just leave me alone.
All right, fine.
All right. I have enough action for one day with all of this. You're talking to a
Okay.
technot. That's enough. Okay, let's get started. So let's talk about these articles. They're both on phonemic awareness, and it got a lot of attention. One was entitled On the Phonemes in Phonemic Awareness, and then the other was more on teaching phonemes. The issue, I think, that people are confused about is how you put all this into practice. And that's why we wanted teachers on, in particular, practitioners, tutors, parents who are in the know about this, because Dr. Seidenberg is a scientist, and he has brought a lot to the field of education. Brilliant man. I have his book ready, and Language at the Speed of Sight. As you can see, it has 1 million post-its, and the book is all marked up. It's a deep, deep, dense book, and he definitely has brought a lot to the field, the science of reading. But now let's talk about what the science is and how this translates to practice. And even on his blog, he says at the top of his blog, connecting science and education. And I think it's leaving people wondering how,
Yeah, Faith, that's I think back to the episode that we had with Steve Dykstra, because I remember there was another time that, Seidenberg came out with an article. I think maybe it was a PowerPoint or something. And it kind of left me thinking. It was thought-provoking, but I felt like it wasn't speaking to me in the sense that I understood what it was telling me from a practical standpoint of what to do next. And I felt like, it left me hanging. But I also remember the wise words that Steve said. He said, when a scientist speaks, especially a knowledgeable one, you have to at least listen. Now, when I was reading the article, I actually, Faith, I'm going to be honest, I don't know if I agreed with some of the things in the article. And some of the stuff went against what I know or what I see works best for kids in the classroom. So it left me like hanging almost. And then, we did reach out to Mark Seidenberg. We did not hear back from him. We did email him. We always try to go to the researchers. We have a great relationship with researchers. We didn't hear back from him. So then I found myself going on the threads, Faith. I saw a lot of people chatting in threads. So here I am again, searching for information. How do I dissect it? And I think it had a lot of good information, but I'm seeing a lot of other researchers are breaking things down in a way that I understand a little bit more clearly. And this one left me a little bit puzzled. And I know Seidenberg's going to come out and probably explain it more, and maybe, he'll host his own event. Yeah.
I think we should summarize a little bit what these
Go
two
for
are
it.
saying. So before we even start a conversation, let's summarize.
Yeah. Let's do it.
In the article, in Article 1,
yeah,
I pulled out from it was he said that rather than being a prerequisite for reading, phonemes are an abstraction, which means it's really hard to take a word and get these pure individual sounds, right? So that results from engaging in a variety of activities in which print and sound are paired. Okay, that's been around since the National Reading Panel, that we should always be pairing letters and sounds. And children will improve with their phonemic awareness by having letters and working with letters too. Now, since the National Reading Panel came out, David Kilpatrick's work kind of changed that around a little bit, where people were teaching phonemic awareness as a separate task. And then there were programs. I'm not going to, specify which one, but I think we're all familiar with the one that came out that was really geared to teaching phonemic awareness as something separate from phonics. But we've known this for a while, but we've gotten away from that. He also said in the article that speech does not consist of a sequence of discrete sounds like beads on a string. Now, from a scientific point of view, that's accurate. But from a practical teaching point of view, I don't know any phonics program that doesn't actually take a word and separate it into sounds. So if it's O.G. Wilson, people are tapping. If it's speech to print, people are saying a word and breaking it down into its sounds. And when we say sounds, maybe he would say segments. It's very confusing to a typical practitioner, to the regular Joe out there, to the teacher, to understand, because although what he's saying is all rooted in science, the practical piece is what I think we're all a little bit confused about. So I don't know how you feel, Judy.
Where did this all of a sudden come from? It's just hard because, I think a lot of us in our practice have shifted, right? I personally have shifted very, for a while we were doing a lot of things in isolation, especially with phonemic awareness. We were doing a lot of things where kids weren't seeing the letters. And, even a lot of my teachers in the classroom, they would be like, I think my kids are going to get it better when they see the letter and sound connection. And, at some point we weren't ready to make that shift. But then the research said you need to shift. And, programs like, I'm not going to name them, everybody knows what they are. They started to be held accountable, and they started to make shifts where there was, that visual representation, where there was more attention at connecting the sounds and the letters. But it's like we just grasped that information, and now it's almost like we're being hit with another curveball. And how do we interpret this? Also, there was something about the schwa there, Faith. Tell me, what was that all about?
So he was saying that how teachers will instruct kids to make sure they are really saying the sounds in a very clean way without adding up. So,
and is that bad?
In other words, if kids are having trouble separating sounds, and let's say they're saying b, at, and they're being instructed to change it to make sure they only say b, 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 he's saying that's an artificial, isolated sound. So this is not, it shouldn't be expected that kids are able to isolate like that. But again, I think it's a little bit tricky, because what are you supposed to say? I mean, there was an interesting post by Janine, and that was the conversation that
tell everybody who Janine is, for the people that might not know.
So she's on Spell Talk, and she was engaging with Mark, and she was funny. She said this. What is she supposed to say? Good morning, class. Today we are going to pretend that you make 3 different sounds with your mouth when you say the word cat. Like, really, it's like, how do you do this? And that's what we don't get. I went back to his book, and I have to tell you, I was looking through it because it's so dense, and he does say the same message in his book. It's not like he deviated, but I guess I wasn't focused so much on that part because it's such a big book. I didn't really give that part so much attention, but he does talk about this, that, you really can't do this, and that teachers should be careful about instructing kids in this way. I want to know what type of phonics program does it differently. The way he said it, the way I'm taking it is, he said we should look at the letters, give it letter sounds at the beginning, and then use like onset rhyme for kids to see patterns, almost like an analytic phonics. So that means synthetic phonics, linguistic phonics, OG style phonics, all of that is like, well, what he's saying is that really doesn't work. But we know as practitioners, it can and it often does work if taught well. So I find this a little confusing. I wonder if people out there are feeling the same way. Judy, could you
Also,
start getting people to
there's not a lot
talk
of
about this?
There's not a lot of people chatting right now because
Well, I see Erin say, well, you go back to
wait. I want to
Malcolm.
just hold on, Faith, 1 second. I want to just let people know I am checking Facebook. So even if there's not a chat for this event, post your questions, post your comments. I know we did have a couple. Faith, you want me to go in there and see which ones we have?
Well, I see Erin's right now. You could look at the earlier ones, but I just want to see. So Erin said, enough with the research minutia. Let's move on to the science of reading implementation. She gets a cheers. Cheers to Erin. Okay. Practical guidance on what best practice looks like in the classroom is what we need next. And this is the same conversation we had with Debbie Hepplewhite. Like, you know, again, this is not a conversation about speech to print or print to speech. This is a conversation about helping kids in a practical way. And I am all for research, all about research. But, you know, it's almost like the extreme politics, Judy, where you have extreme left, extreme right, nothing gets done. And then who suffers? We do. And it's like, it's the, I don't know. I find it.
Okay, but can I play devil's advocate, Faith?
Yeah.
All right, maybe he put it out and he wants people to just process the information, make some of their own thoughts, you know, digest it, and maybe something's going to happen in the next couple of days that he's going to say, okay, now that you guys had some time to think about it, ponder it, now this is what it means for classroom instruction. I have a feeling that that's going to happen. It's just frustrating because, you know, as educators, we want to get it right? The system got it wrong for so long. But Faith, you still didn't answer my question. That whole schwa thing, that's a big one in the buildings, in the schools where I've been working.
I did answer. I just said that, you know,
I know, but we were
that's the like cutting that off, this artificial dissection.
He's saying not to cut it off.
So he's saying paying so much attention to those types of things is not the science of reading. And in linguistics, well, let me answer. So in linguistics, he's saying that no linguist would say that that's accurate. So that might be true, but then let's go. How do you teach kids? I know I've had success using segmentation. I know other people have had success. And
let's be honest, there's a reason that the screeners that we're all using in schools have a segment, even something like Acadians and Dibbles, phoneme segmentation fluency, because it's been shown by evidence and research that that's what helps develop a strong reader, right?
Well,
here's confusing, but Faith, if you think about text, right? When you see text and you have a kid sounding out a word, they do need to really be solid in making those sounds and connecting them. And if they're adding sounds like that's not on the page when they're making the word.
Well, what he's saying is, from what I gather, is we should pay attention to naming letters, the alphabet names, and that's another conversation.
Right.
Because I've taught kids, and honestly, I find letter names confuse kids sometimes as they're learning to read. That's another conversation.
Yep.
But he says that's important. Then,
Did he say why it's important?
well, he said that this labeling, it makes kids have a place to go with a letter name, right? Like, and that's stable. A letter name is stable.
Yeah.
And the way people pronounce sounds, everyone could pronounce sounds differently. So he says you should not be teaching sounds in the same way that you teach letter names. And so he said that. And then after they get that basic letter sound connection, it should go right into the word. And we should start with rhymes, R-I-M-E, that type of rhyme. So like a pattern, let's say the at family, at, cat, mat, sat. I mean, I did that when I was a child. And, you know, I'm sure there were kids who did not learn with word families like that.
Okay, can I say something, Faith?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting point. So I know we don't usually talk about programs, but Foundations has glued sounds. And that's kind of like word families too. But a lot of people said that that's very connected to balanced literacy. I love them because I think it does make it easier for kids to read. If I know bang, I know sang, I know rang. But is that related to the science of reading or not? Is
Well,
there evidence to support that practice?
I think we should go to our wonderful people who tuned in. Why don't you start reading?
I have a good one. Here's a really good one. All right, so we have Nikki Davis. This is what she had to say. I think the articles could be interpreted differently based on perspective. In the end, what is the learning outcome for students? What is the most effective and efficient way to make sure that we all get access to print for meaning and enjoyment? So she's looking forward to some answers. And
I think we have a group here of practitioners that are looking at these articles and saying this makes people feel like this is almost ammunition for balanced literacy in a way when we have this type of conversation. And again, I don't think that's Mark's intention.
no.
Dr. Seidenberg is just saying when we misinterpret science, that's how we go in the wrong direction. But I have to say, because I went back to his book, and what he seems to be saying here is we need practitioners to be able to do what they have to do, but we're not getting any answers here. I want to see if I could find the part that I'm looking for. Judy, if you could start talking to some other people while I look. Start going through the chat and I'll find something.
Yep, here. I'm actually going into the chat that Seidenberg has also. Okay. So here's some things that people said. Faith, here's one. One person said, I feel a sense of relief reading this. So some people actually feel really relieved. I've been saying for years that there's no point in trying to teach phonemic awareness before the alphabetic code and reading and spelling. You have explained it better, and I will quote you. Thank you. So I guess it resonated with somebody, but not with everybody. It left me puzzled. It left me puzzled. Yeah.
So, but that goes back to what I said before, that we know from, the National Reading Panel that we really should not have been just focusing on phonemes in the dark, that there was research to say we should have letters included with this. Because what he says is it's phonemic awareness is a result, it's a consequence of good phonics teaching. Okay, fine. But what does good phonics teaching look like? This is the confusion, I think, that there are a lot of different ways to teach that we thought is structured, cumulative. It is. But now, we're left with a lot of questions. Let's go.
So how did it just come?
Stacey Bain said, I've taken SOR, now what? So all right, so now I have this science, now what? It's the same questions. Rebecca, I've been following this conversation from his original article. Okay. We've been following it too, Rebecca. Could you take a look, Judy, at those comments?
I think you're seeing more comments because I think it's on your high five literacy. Where are you seeing
No,
them?
open up here. Open up on our, go into the chats here. Do you see what I'm saying?
Hold on. No, I don't see it.
Hold on.
Oh,
Let me see.
I just
Sarah, okay, I found Sarah Glazer said, Jan Wasowitz said that if you teach "b," it's "b-a-t." So
Right.
like in bat, "b-a-t." Yeah. So, okay. Megan, let's see. Hi, Judy. If you can post link here, I will put it in the chat. Thank you, Megan.
So what is Megan asking for?
No, she's just helping. That's what she's doing over here. Thank you. Okay, so I think we're caught up with some of those comments. All right. So one thing I noticed, what he said was here. I found it, by the way. National Reading Panel.
Faith, just take the comments off the page. It's just staying on the page.
What do you mean take it off?
Do you see the big comments or no?
No, there's nothing to take off. It's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, I see over here. I don't know how to take that off.
Okay. Okay.
So, in any case, if anybody wants to look on page 267 of Mark's book, now he talks about the National Reading Panel, and he said, obviously good things came out of the National Reading Panel, but then he said, however, the panel was not charged with making specific curricular recommendations. Translating the panel's findings into effective practices required additional expertise, effort, and evaluation, which were in short supply. That led to blunders. Well, Mark, Dr. Seidenberg, you know what? I feel like we're in the same boat right now. Like, if you're saying that the National Reading Panel did not have this expertise to turn it around, what are your suggestions? We need to know the how here. We're practitioners, we're looking for that. And it's really, really tricky. We want to know what happens next. Going to the article, I circled a couple of things that I was a little confused with. Maybe some of you were confused. It said here in one of the articles, he talked about the implementation of doing this. And he said, teaching children the letters of the alphabet, their names, and an associated sound for each such as B for B is essential. Okay. Beyond that, is there any reason to teach any sounds of words in isolation or independent of spelling? In my view, no. What should be taught instead? In my view, the emphasis should be on teaching the correspondences between spellings and the natural, authentic pronunciations of words chosen so as to lead the child into treating words as if they consist of segments. So what he's saying is, however it's pronounced, however is the natural sound as kids are sounding out, that's the way it is. Associate a sound to a letter, sound it out. But okay, but now they want to spell the word. What happens then?
You definitely have to isolate when you're spelling a word.
How do you not isolate when you're spelling a word? I don't understand how you could do that. I don't spell by patterns. I mean, you can, if I know chime, I'll know time. Okay.
You're on a roll, Faith. You're on a roll.
No, but what I'm saying is, it's just, I'm confused, and I'm sure other people are confused as well. What do you want to say, Jew?
Did you call me a Jew?
No. Judy,
All right.
Judela.
All right. You know, the only thing I can say, I'm obsessed with sounds and making sounds. That's been my life with teaching kids how to read for a while now, right? But I do have to say, a lot of kids do have trouble blending, Faith. And sometimes when you do overblend in isolation, kids do struggle a little bit. That I can see. That's why I've been pushing myself to work with some kids on continuous blending, because
Correct.
I have found that really over isolating can be very hard for kids because they don't retain the
100%
sound.
agree with you. 100% agree with you.
So was Mark kind of like implying that?
Well, I think what he's saying is if it's separated from the word in an artificial way, it's very hard to isolate. So when you're blending and you do continuous phonation, like ma,
Right.
mi, ma, and you're taking the vowel along with that consonant sound and then adding on another sound, that, that there's research behind that. But again, I think we're looking for this bridge. We don't want to waste time. And I think
You're right. Faith, you hit it on the money. The
Yeah.
school year has started for a lot of teachers. I saw Lindsay Kemeny. She's already started. Her classroom's ready. And kids don't have time to waste. I'm going back to work in about 2 weeks. We don't have time to waste. So please get your message clear to us as soon as possible. All of us practitioners in the field, we want to get it right. But Faith, how do we know? Did something change, or this is old research and he's just like reiterating something? What happened?
Well, clearly, his message in the book, if anybody goes back to the book, he is consistent in his message. I wanted to see inconsistencies. I spent hours looking through all my notes. It's pretty much the same message. And this book came out years ago. And what I think the issue is that it's coming out now because there's a lot of confusion. As I mentioned, the whole David Kilpatrick issue with advanced.
But I think as a system, a majority of practitioners realized we have to put on the lights and make that connection between the sounds and the letters. But it seems like he's not thinking that that's enough. He's thinking that maybe the implementation's not where it should be. Obviously, he's seeing something somewhere.
Well, what I want to understand, I think the classroom piece is missing. It's great to have this science and say, well, when kids talk, there's no such thing as really separating those sounds clearly. We could try, but he's saying it's impossible. Fine. But we do some things in an artificial way to be able to teach kids, right? We are successful because we're getting them to read. I don't think any parent of mine, when I taught kids to read, would argue and say, well, Faith, Mark Seidenberg said that you can't do that, but they're happy their kids are reading. So, I mean, where do we draw the line and say, well, if something works, then what's the problem if it doesn't jive with this purist view? And Debbie mentioned that too, like this purist view of, saying, well, this is better than this, or this is no good, when we know that there are ways that work. Synthetic phonics can work. Speech to print can work. OG can work. What we want to know is what is the most efficient, what works, and how do we get the most kids reading? And teachers are going to fall back on their personal experience unless we get these answers from researchers. That's what's going to happen. There's no other choice.
I think you're right. But I think that there's already compelling evidence that some things are more efficient than other things. But I think that not everybody's willing to make those shifts immediately. Schools are spending a lot of money. they're buying a lot of materials, and then, you know, they'll find out something's more efficient maybe the next day. Like for instance, right? You know, I'm obsessed with syllable types. I love them. I love them. You teach kids to read without them, and so do I. But we both get the job done, right? I get my clients to read, you get your clients to read. But the point is, you think that there's probably more efficient ways. So how, as a system, not just one school to another school, do we make sure that we're really following the evidence and making sure that efficiency is prioritized?
Well, I think that's the way we should leave this message with researchers. We want more researchers getting into classrooms and really seeing real-time practical application, not just in a lab, not just in a university lab setting. You know, some of these types of things, it's honestly like ammunition. I don't think he means it to be, but it almost turns into ammunition where you know that there are going to be people who take this to an extreme and will use Dr. Seidenberg's blogs as, like, you know, a post for going in the other direction. It's going to be chopped up, diced and sliced as a message to be used in a different way. That's what's going to happen.
So what's the solution? What, you know, at the same token, I think back to what Steve Dietrich said. He said, when somebody as knowledgeable says something, don't ignore it. Maybe the delivery.
Actually, I don't know if my friend Harriet is listening right now, because she was going to come on. We've had Harriet on with us, Judy. And
Yeah.
she is so funny because she private messaged me and
Remind everybody what book she wrote also.
so
She's
Sound
the author.
Summary. Sound to Summary is her book.
Yep.
And which is interesting because we're talking about how sound could be this artificial piece, but yet she's a very successful teacher. So here we go. She sent me a message and she said, I am also reminded of that old joke. Doctor, my wife thinks she's a chicken. I would do something about it, but we really need the eggs. Similarly, Dr. Seidenberg, our teachers think words can be broken up into phonemes. We would do something about it, but we really need to teach our students to read. That's brilliant. I mean, that summarizes it right there. Like, okay, we know that that's the science, Mark, but we really need to teach kids how to read. Let's get on with it. I mean, that's how I am reading.
Wow, you're pretty
I'm a little heated, only because
let me tell you guys, our podcast, we've been through hell tonight. We have been through hell tonight. And you know what? I got to give my co-host Faith a shout out. You know, she was so upset. We both experienced a slight sense of trauma with what we saw going on online tonight. But at the end of the day, when Faith starts to talk about what she's passionate about, words like phonemes, I mean, who could talk about phonemes in a more passionate way than my co-host? She's such a wonderful, wonderful, brilliant person. And, you know, I get it, Faith. You're a little bit maybe annoyed, perturbed, but, you know, I know that he's going to come out and deepen the discussion. Maybe he has a rationale. And at the same token, maybe everybody's delivery is not the same way. I mean, we've been lucky enough to talk to a lot of researchers and practitioners now that, you know, we've been collaborating a lot with universities that are really listening to people like Faith and I. They're really understanding that we, as the people in the trenches that are still doing the work, need assistance and guidance of what does that look like into the classroom. But not everybody's going to be that way, Faith. And, you know, we have to understand that not every scientist's delivery is the same. So how can we take their information and still make it a, you know?
I think here's what I'm hoping, that when researchers are putting something out, that they need to think about how it's going to be interpreted or misinterpreted.
All right, Faith, I have to give you I hope it's not the BS button. You've been through enough BS tonight. Here's from my
Enough
co-host.
yes today, please. All right.
Yeah, no, that you're right, Faith. So this is my plea to the researchers. Please, 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 when you write a research article, you could write it, but also focus on what that means in terms of application. Break it down for us classroom teachers. We're not scientists. We're delivering those lessons. We're sitting and working with kids, teaching kids how to make the sounds. And if something does have to shift, we will be open to it. Sometimes shifting will make us uncomfortable. Like tonight, I'm uncomfortable. There were some things that I have seen work. Just clarify it. Tell us what that means in terms of application, but also tell us why, and where you got that information. And if it's different than something that happened the day before, tell us, okay, this is the way it was. This is why it shifted. Like,
I don't think anything shifted here, Judy. That's the whole thing. I think.
But then why is it coming now?
Okay, because I do think that people on Spell Talk were having a conversation, and then he took that conversation and he put it on his blog, right? And what's happening, I think, is that people are a little more confused by this information because there's not that practical piece. Look, what he said is true. What he said is absolutely true. He is speaking in his very, scientific, steady voice. The message came through. What he's saying is there is no research that says that kids need a prerequisite of just phonemes, that phonemes are best taught when you're teaching kids to read with print. Okay, that's established. This other part about this artificial isolated phoneme level or segmenting, as he wants to call it. Okay, you can't. That's the science. Like, you can't separate a word into these pure isolated sounds. But then how do you teach a child to spell?
Okay, I'm going to ask you an honest question, Faith.
Yeah.
I love putting my co-host on the spot. She's probably thinking, knock it off already. All right. Is anything that you're doing with kids based on what you read last night and the night before changing? Or are you waiting to make that decision? Or are you
okay? So here's the thing.
Yeah, I want an honest.
Okay.
I'm not ready to make any changes yet. I need to know the whole story.
Okay.
I'm not ready yet.
Here's the thing. I'm not married to anything.
Good.
I'm open to change all the time. I mean, that's why I've taken so many different types of trainings for years and years and years. And still, Judy, you and I just signed up for Literacy IO, right, with Texas A&M. So,
woohoo! Texas A&M, shout out.
We've done Leslie's SRSD. It's not like I am against learning. I'm always learning. Here's the thing. Mark said something that was very interesting to me. He said that, people get stuck and it goes against what they've been doing and it's hard for them to make the shift. I have to be honest. I easily could shift. I could shift between speech to print, print to speech. That's how I work. Whatever roles that works for kids, I will roll with it. What I don't understand is when you put something out there and you just tell us that, well, this isn't what science is showing us. Well, then show us how to do this. If you gave me pure examples, like he said, go from teaching letter sounds into real words, into picking out patterns like rhyme, R-I-M-E, like we said, ein, fine, dine, mine, shine. If you're telling me that that's going to be the answer, I would, I do that when kids already have solid understanding of how to break words up into sounds and blending, then I will show them patterns. But
Right.
I don't understand. Synthetic phonics has a ton of research behind it. Speech to print works beautifully for lots of kids. I use it. I believe in it. I know that OG Wilson, for me, it works, but it's not as efficient. So, but I'm not saying it doesn't work. So
And some people are gonna freak out when you say that.
okay, but it's, and for me, what I'm saying is, I want to pick out the best of the best of the best. And this is from years in the making. So
But Faith,
if you're asking me what I'm going to do, this article is not making me do anything differently, if that's what you're asking me.
Not yet.
Not yet, because I don't have the how. Wouldn't even know how to put it into practice. There's not one phonics program that I know that works out there that does what he's saying.
So do you think in general, Faith, do you think in general when blogs are written, they should always include an application piece for if it's written for educators?
I don't know if this was written for educators in terms, I shouldn't say that. I don't know if this was written for practitioners. I'm saying this incorrectly. I don't know if this was written for practitioners. I think he knows practitioners were going to read this, but I think you have to be mindful when it gets into the hands of a practitioner, it's really confusing. And if anything, it kind of is taking what a lot of us work so hard to do, to go from failing students to failing schools and to try to turn this around and leave us wondering what next. As Erin said, what next? I don't know. I really don't know. And that was the conversation I was hoping we would have with a lot more people, but I know I saw names that just didn't come back on when we shifted.
Oh, there's a lot of Faith. There's a lot of people on. You're streaming on YouTube. There's a lot of action. It's just we're a little shook up by our.
Yeah, I mean, seeing that porn was a little bit. I wanted to hide. You know, honestly, it was a little weird to see that, but we pivoted, and that shows we're willing to shift.
Correct. Correct. Faith was going to kill me. I was crying. She accused me of laughing. My sons were in the kitchen when it was happening.
I was like, this isn't funny. This is not funny.
Then I hear Faith's husband. He's making wisecracks in the background. And you know what? For my partner, Paul, where the hell are you tonight? I could have used some good support and some TLC, because what we saw tonight did not make me happy. But I had the best time.
Well, I think this was supposed to be a quickie. So I
never use that word. Don't use that word tonight anymore.
All right. Well, it was supposed to happen quickly. And so I don't want to take up any more time. But
no more time.
Now that we put that out there, Judy and I will be in contact with lots of people. We do want to hear from you. Make sure you do put your comments in the chat. Now you know how we're rolling with this and what we think. I think from what I see, the comments pretty much align to what we're saying, that we really want to know the how-to here, because if this is, not accurate, there are a lot of people I respect with programs. I know Janine, all the speech to print people out there, Harriet, all the print to speech like Debbie, and all the synthetic phonics people out there, Jenny. All these people are passionate and are confident that what they do helps kids. I know what I do helps. I know, Judy, you feel that way too. And I know we shouldn't just go by our personal experience, but we have changed lives and we have a track record of changing lives. So until something comes out that's more definitive and actually tells me, yes, this is something that you need to try and do, and you'll get better results, I'm all in. I have no problem changing. But until that point, no, nothing here is helping me to shift.
Can I ask you one more question?
Yep.
Do we listen to one scientist, or do we have to hear from a consensus of multiple scientists in order for us to really feel rock solid about something?
You know what? That's a great question. But here you go. I have to tell you that whole phonemic awareness piece, Susan Brady, Mark Seidenberg, Tim Shanahan, those are just three off the top of my head. They were not in agreement with David Kilpatrick with his theories, right? Well, it's a lot of talk about that. So from my standpoint, and actually using print attached to sounds, I'm going with those three on that. I don't think it's necessary to start using these types of programs where you spend a lot of time on phonemes in the dark. That whole phonemic awareness.
Yeah, I don't agree with that either. I shifted a long time ago with that, way before some programs.
But this piece where we're talking about how we can't separate a word into phonemes and this whole thing, and I understand.
I don't know.
I understand. I do see
because it's not authentic spoken language, but I think in order to get to
teach,
right.
I don't know how to do it.
Right.
So I want to have that respectful conversation. If there's anybody out there who could show me what Mark Seidenberg is saying in terms of putting it into practice. Now, if you tell me you do this with morphology, I'm going to say I use morphology, but I don't jump right into it at the beginning. I don't know really a lot of people who start with morphology teaching without giving some attention to phoneme grapheme correspondences. I
ask you another question.
Do that. Well, maybe I'm confused.
I want to ask you another question, and I know I mentioned it before. Universal screeners have phoneme segmentation fluency. Why would they have it if it wasn't evidence-based? Why would they even have that?
I don't know. And I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of this, and I understand what you teach, what you assess isn't necessarily what you teach. So here's that answer. So you could assess phonemic awareness without specifically teaching a task of phonemic awareness. You could assess with nonsense words without teaching nonsense words. I get that's the issue, but I don't want to talk anymore. So let's leave it as this quick. Wasn't that quick, but
listen, we survived. And you know what I want to say to our fans? We love you. Thanks for all your support. This has probably been our best year at the Literacy View. We love our researchers. We love our teachers. We love our fans. We love everybody who's in the trenches with us, supporting us. And, we definitely want to hear from you. We want more interaction on our pages. We want more of those discussions. You don't always need to agree with Faith. You don't always need to agree with Judy. But I think the way we really shift the right way is by having these discussions, by not being afraid to ask these questions, by not idolizing anybody. Don't idolize me. Don't idolize Faith.
There's no idol worship here, that's for sure. And I just want to leave this point. Dr. Seidenberg, if you are listening or watching, we tried to email you before to see about having this conversation. If you listen and now want to have that respectful conversation with us, we welcome it. So we would gladly have you come on. And if you could address some of our concerns, let's talk about this. And we want to hear from you, our viewers, our listeners. Tell us what you think. All right, we're going to wrap up and we'll see you soon.